Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Canadian premiers in Washington today to sway lawmakers away from Trump's tariffs. Plus, Canadian Taxpayers Federation says Mark Carney plans to hide the carbon tax with sneaky tactics. We speak with Chris Sims of the CTF, who explains. And a strike by Alberta school support workers could soon grow as 2,400 staff vote to join the job action. Thanks so much for joining us. Canada's premiers headed to the White House today. It's the first time in history all 13 premiers have been in Washington at the same time. They met with the U.S. president's senior advisors to try to stave off Donald Trump's ongoing tariff threats. The premiers have been telling business groups and Republican lawmakers in Washington this week that both countries would be hurt in a trade war. Trump has signed executive orders to impose 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports into the United States starting March 12th. He previously threatened 25% across-the-board tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports with a lower 10% levy on Canadian energy. That plan has been delayed until at least March the 4th.
I'm so grateful as chair to have such a talented group standing with me right here, and all different perspectives around the country. And every perspective is really concerning their area, but do you know what everyone agrees on? Is protecting Canada as a whole. What success looks like is zero tariffs. We're their largest trading partner, we're their #1 customer. And I'm not too sure if they fully understand the impact on both countries, both sides of the border. Inflation will happen, interest rates will go up, plants will be closed on both sides of the border.
During the question period with reporters, New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt took issue with the notion that Premier's actions have not been successful yet.
I think that the proposal that this hasn't been successful is false. We heard that tariffs were going to come in place on January 20th, and they didn't. We heard tariffs were going to come in place in February, and they didn't. We now have a reprieve till March, and we have a phenomenal team, Canada, that is here and united, engaging with Americans who agree that they see the impact that this is going to have on Americans who don't want to pay more money for gas and who don't want to pay more money for food, and they don't want to pay more. And so we are getting a lot of support from the Americans that we're meeting with, businesses, senators, Congress people alike, who all agreed that these tariffs are going to have a negative impact on the U.S., and we're seeing that progress in how the tariffs continue to get pushed off.
Canada's fentanyl czar says he'll work with his U.S. counterpart to improve Canada's efforts to detect and disrupt the trade of the drug. Former RCMP Deputy Commissioner Kevin Brozo was introduced to the public today at a border crossing in Lansdowne, Ontario. He says more details about what he'll be doing in his new position will be released in the coming days. The role of fentanyl czar was created in response to President Trump threatening to impose steep tariffs on all goods from Canada, citing the flow of illegal drugs.
I'm hoping to be able to give an intensity to the work being carried out by thousands of men and women in this country and the United States, trying to deal with the real public safety and national security crisis that is fentanyl. Bringing that integrated approach, bringing the teams together, ensuring the collaboration, ensuring the communication is happening at officials level on both sides of the border in communities across the country.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, meantime, speaking from Washington, says her team has already been in touch with the fentanyl czar and says it's a step in the right direction for Canada.
I think diplomacy is working. I think that the fact that we got a 30-day reprieve was because we agreed to work on the cross-border problem of fentanyl. I was pleased to see the federal government announce a fentanyl czar, and my administration has already been in touch with him to talk about how in Alberta we can lend to the success of those efforts. So what I would say is what I've seen from this president is that he is prepared to make a deal. We've made a deal on that. I think we can make a deal on steel and aluminum by making very much the same argument that I've been making on energy and critical minerals. We've won the argument that those raw materials are essential to American success. It comes in, it makes value-added products, it creates good American jobs, it creates good American products that we buy back. Same thing for aluminum. They just do not make enough for their defense industry, their auto industry, and their critical needs. So I think aluminum, we can make the very same argument, and on steel, we buy as much steel products from them as they buy from us.
Canadians are scouring labels at grocery stores as they continue to try to support homegrown products amid trade tensions with the U.S. Kraft Heinz is a multinational company that wants to buy in on the Buy Canadian trend. At that same press conference, Smith was asked when she became aware of concerns over contract negotiations at Alberta Health Services. Smith says if there was any wrongdoing found, they would like to get to the bottom of it.
Well, I'm glad that we're going to have the Auditor General take a look at it. I first became aware of it when I saw the newspaper reporting on it. And we're interested in hearing what the Auditor General has to say. We've already set up a shared file so that they can get all of the documents that we have to see if there is any wrongdoing. If there's wrongdoing, we'd like to get to the bottom of it. And if there isn't, we need to find out why AHS is standing in the way of charter surgical centres.
The allegations stem from AHS's former CEO claiming she was fired for pointing out concerns over Alberta Health Minister Adriana LaGrange, stripping AHS of its power to negotiate contracts of private surgical facilities. And while our government officials are dealing with allegations, tariff threats, and border issues, there is still a leadership race underway. A new poll suggests that if Mark Carney wins the Liberal leadership race, he would erase the massive lead the Conservatives have enjoyed over the past year and a half. Here is Kyle Dugan of the Canadian Press with more.
A new Leger poll paints a picture of how the frontrunners in the Liberal leadership race might fare leading their party against the federal Conservatives. If Mark Carney becomes the next Liberal leader, survey research suggests that the party would gain a 6-point bounce and erase the advantage held by the Conservative Party led by Pierre Poilievre. A Carney-led Liberal Party would garner 37% support, with the Tories also at 37% in a dead heat. But a Chrystia Freeland-led party would slide to 28% and leave the Conservatives in majority government territory. More Canadians also placed their trust in Carney with taking on U.S. President Donald Trump than did Freeland, at 20% to just 6%. Pollster Andrew Enns says this is a tough spot to be in for Freeland and an easy sales pitch for Carney's team. The poll reached more than 1,500 adults from February 7th to the 10th, but does not carry a margin of error since it's an online poll.
And according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Liberal leadership candidate Mark Carney plans to hide the carbon tax, even though he's campaigning to get rid of it. According to the CTF, he's using sneaky tactics to hit businesses with a hidden carbon tax and apply stipulations to how people will spend it. To explain this in more detail is Chris Sims, the Alberta director of the CTF. Chris, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Now, the CTF is claiming Mark Carney is planning to hide the carbon tax. How is he planning to do this exactly?
So, number one, with his announcement, he was very careful in his language. He said that he wants to get rid of the consumer carbon tax. And in particular, he said that the current carbon tax had suffered from a perception problem, meaning that all of us who are getting upset looking at our home heating bills saying, why is my carbon tax $60 a month or $40 a month, whatever it is? That was all just our misperception. It wasn't the fact that we were getting screwed by the carbon tax. That wasn't the problem. It was all misperception. So Carney himself has said that he wants to make big polluters pay and get rid of the front-facing consumer carbon tax. The issue here is that in his mind, a big polluter is a producer of natural gas, which we use to heat our homes. A big polluter is a fuel refinery that is creating gasoline and diesel at the pumps. Those companies will not eat the cost of the carbon tax and make it go away. Those costs will be passed down to you and me. So we will still be paying the consumer carbon tax. We just won't see it because he's hiding it.
And Chris, the CTF is also saying that Carney is making it so that people can't just get the cash back to pay bills or buy groceries. It has to be spent in certain ways. So what's the plan here?
As it stands right now, some people get some cash back on the current carbon tax. Carney has stated himself he will get rid of those cash rebates and replace it with a plan where you earn for lack of a better term, green points or Carney points. Like, we don't know what they're called. You have to save up these green points, and then you can use those green points to purchase government approved machines like a heat pump or a solar scooter or a washer dryer or a furnace. The issue here is that even though it's not enough money and even though not everybody gets them, at least some folks were getting some of their money back, and it was cash, and they could choose what to do with it. But a lot of central planner types in government, of which Carney is one, they get upset with that kind of cashy freedom. And they then want to control what you're doing with those purchases. So he says that he's going to replace the cash rebates with this point system.
Could there be an end in sight to the war in Ukraine? U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he held a lengthy and productive phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin about ending the war. Trump said on social media that the two also discussed a variety of topics and agreed to work closely together. He says negotiations are set to begin immediately between U.S. and Russian delegations. The White House said Trump also called Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and said the conversation went very well. However, while in Brussels, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Ukrainian membership into NATO and the return of Ukraine's pre-2014 borders were unrealistic. The White House says negotiations are set to begin in Munich on Friday, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio set to lead the U.S. delegation. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Ukrainians must be the ones who decide how the war with Russia ends.
One of the things Canada has been very clear about is that it is only Ukrainians that get to decide what is acceptable to them as an outcome of any peace negotiations. Obviously, people will have different perspectives around strategies, around positionings, but for us, it's very simple. Ukrainians are busy defending their sovereignty, their democracy. They're busy standing up for the rule of law as it applies in all of our democracies. Ukrainians get to decide what the outcome of that peace process must be.
Trudeau is wrapping up his one-day visit to Brussels to focus on deepening Canada's trade and defense ties with Europe. A strike by Alberta school support workers could soon grow as union locals representing more than 2,400 staff vote to join the job action. The Canadian Union of Public Employees says that includes more than 1,100 custodial and maintenance employees with the Calgary Public and Catholic school divisions. It also includes educational assistants and support staff with the Black Gold, Foothills, and Parkland divisions. They join more than 4,000 education support staff who have been on strike in Fort McMurray and the Edmonton region since the beginning of January. Alberta Minister of Art, Culture and Status of Women, Tanya Furr, announced a comprehensive strategy to end gender-based violence. The province is investing $15.7 million this year to bring in violence prevention methods and assist survivors, while the 10-year strategy is still in development. In addition, $7.2 million will go towards children and family services, while $3 million will support shelter resources found across the province.
I am announcing several initiatives that will support our government's response to gender-based violence, including supporting women's shelter programming to focus on access to safety and inclusive services, improving the reporting and prevention efforts at post-secondary institutions and First Nations colleges to address campus sexual violence, increasing service provider access to education and resources related to elder abuse, supporting academic research on gender-related injury and illness in the workplace, strengthening supports for Albertans navigating the justice system, including developing more survivor-centered, culturally sensitive, trauma-informed services, and implementing Indigenous-led initiatives that advance the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Roadmap.
The funding for the initiative is part of a $54 million bilateral agreement with the federal government. A new report from EQT Association shows that auto thefts across Canada continue to trend downwards. Thefts of private passenger vehicles decreased by 18.6% in 2024 from the previous year to just over 57,000 incidents. That's compared to historic highs in 2022 and 2023 with over 70,000 thefts each year. EQT says while the current number is still unreasonably high, there is anticipation that Transport Canada will release measures this year to potentially mandate auto manufacturers to modernize safety devices and prevent thefts. On a provincial basis, Quebec witnessed the largest decrease at 32.4%, attributed to vehicle recoveries and prevention methods at ports. Alberta saw a 10.1% decrease in 2024, a relatively minor change compared to the rest of the country besides Atlantic Canada. The Canada Pension Plans Investment Board, which operates and manages the fund, earned a net return of 3.8% in its latest quarter. It comes as CPP Investments' net assets grew to almost $700 billion at December 31st, up from the end of the previous quarter.